Good morning, Lagos. Thank you very much for staying tuned here on Smooth 98.1 Smooth Breakfast with Ayo Mairo Ese.
And with Valentine Ohu.
And joining us this morning to analyze our stories on today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981, we have Mr. Ceee. Good morning, Ceee.
Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Valentine. Good morning, Naya. Good morning, Taiwo.
All right, I was going to introduce Taiwo was our surprise unveil.
That's Taiwo Oyewole.
But Mr. Ceee is at Mista
Yes.
C with 5 E's on
5 E's.
Twitter. And we have, you already heard his voice, and it's my pleasure to make very welcome Taiwo Oyewole on Freshly Press 91 this morning.
Good to be here. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Taiwo.
So Taiwo is at Tai Oyewole on Twitter. So that's TAIOYEWOLE on Twitter. Collectively, we are Smooth 91 FM. That's where you should send your messages on Twitter to. Our hashtag for today is Freshly Pressed 91.
That's right. And you can also send us messages on WhatsApp. That WhatsApp number is 0809 444 0981. 0809 444 0981.
We're also streaming live on YouTube, so please search for us, Smooth 98.1, and interact with us through that channel as well. All right, straight into our first story for this morning. I'll come to you, Mr. Ceee, for this. Presidency reacts to Leah Sharibu's purported death. Punch newspaper has this report, as well as I would imagine all the dailies. It was big news yesterday. We had an aid worker with an NGO Action Against Hunger, Grace Taku, who was kidnapped by Boko Haram terrorists on July 18. Her video was released yesterday where she mentioned that Leah, alongside one Alice, had been killed by the insurgents because the federal government's inability did not do anything with regards to them, or in her quotes, failed to do something. Please, can you take us through the story?
Okay, so a bit of context first of all. On the 19th of February 2018, 110 schoolgirls were kidnapped from a school in Dapchi. On the 21st of March, 109 were returned. Leah Sharibu was the only one who was not returned, and the reports had it that she refused to convert to Islam. Ever since, the federal government, this administration, has been promising Nigerians that it's been doing all it can to secure her release. Then, just recently, we get this video from Grace Taku in which she states, as part of her own proof of life video, that Leah Sharibu has been killed. Now, this is it, and I've seen the comment by Garba Shehu, who's the senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity. And all he talks about is the government is still working to have everyone released. It's a bit disturbing to find out that the government is not even aware whether Leah Sharibu is indeed dead.
You think, you really think the government is not aware? Because at the time you mentioned, March of 2018, when the girls were released, some of the girls were released, or most of the girls were released, it was said that a ransom was paid.
Yes, about 3 million euros.
Exactly, was paid for those 109 girls released, and Leah Sharibu was left behind.
Yes.
And nothing was done.
Nothing
to
was
secure her release. No payments was made for Leah Sharibu.
Now, incidentally, I don't know how the negotiations were conducted or carried out, but that ransom should have covered everyone. So it's shocking that money left Nigerian Treasury to fund kidnappers and terrorists. It's equally shocking that she wasn't returned. And it's equally very disturbing that more than a year later, she's not back. Our government cannot tell us whether she's alive or dead.
512 days.
But I have two questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is that the statement from the spokesman of the presidency, this to feature in her video, talked about the Christian Association of Nigeria also doing something. What do you think, or what role do you think they play when it has to do with issues like this, where this is their member by default, she's a Christian, the only Christian amongst those abducted? What role do you think they play, and do you think they played enough, a critical role in the past? So two questions.
Okay.
Leah Sharibu's statement by the Garba Shehu and Christian Association of Nigeria.
Okay, so to answer the first question, his statement is it's vague. That the federal government is aware of it and will take action. You are aware of what? She's alive, she's dead. When she was alive, you took no action. So what action do you want to take when she's dead?
Allegedly.
Can you get her corpse back?
Allegedly.
Allegedly. My take is this: I have no reason to disbelieve this report. because this is a woman, Grace Tackle, is fighting for her life. Now she's reached out to CAN. The reason being this, she's seen what happened to Leah Sharibu, that this government, for whatever reason, was unable to get Leah Sharibu out. She doesn't want to go through the same fate. She's now appealing directly to CAN. If you can raise my ransom money or do whatever it takes, please do it. I'm a Christian. I'm a member of the association.
Almost suggesting that, I mean, if let's assume, and I hope it's not true, assuming that Leah Sharibu is really dead, and Leah Sharibu's fate does not become hers.
Yes.
In such words, right?
Yes.
All right.
That's what she's concerned
And then
about.
very quickly, in 20 seconds, Christian Association of Nigeria, their response to what's been happening in Borno State with regards to the members, because you called on them to also intervene.
Well, they've been very concerned, but the truth of the matter is because they have little coercive powers, there's very little they can do now. But I'm sure they're working behind the scenes to try and resolve all these issues.
All right, thank you very much. Taiwo, I'll come to you for the next story. House to probe huge investment in power sector. Thisday has the reports that the House representatives yesterday resolved to set up an ad hoc committee for a comprehensive investigative hearing on how much money has been sunk into the power sector reform programs over years without commensurate results. Can you please take us to this story?
So, I mean, here we see a member of the House of the representative of the Senate is a lawmaker, Honorable Sada Soli Jibia, Kaduna APC. I think they moved the motion and saying, look, there's been so much money that has been spent in the power sector that how come we haven't seen any results? So again, back to the $16 billion that was spent over a period of time. And some interesting things here. So in 2008, over another spending of $16 billion and so on and so forth. The investigative hearing revealed that the contracts awarded for the Kainji, Egbe, Afam, and Ugeli power stations, as well as 9 other such contracts, totaling $142 million, were never executed, number one.
Yeah.
He's also alleging that contracts awarded over $50 million to companies that did not exist, and another $2 billion worth of energy contracts that were also awarded without bidding and due process, he alleged. And he's saying that, look, up to date, nobody has been prosecuted.
Yes.
Nobody has been even investigated to the point of saying that. And I think that during the elections, we actually saw one video of one of the aspirants who came out, and I think he was interviewed by Model Sharafa Yusuf, and then he did his hands like this when they asked and said, he also alleged to some of these things,
So he made his hand action. Sorry for those who are listening, like, I don't know.
Like, I don't know. And when she asked him that, look, what happened to this people? So, and then he did his hands, as if though, I don't know, as if that sense there. So, personally, I think this is one of the biggest issues we have in Nigeria. There is no accountability. Nobody's held responsible for their actions. Nobody's made to pay for their actions. No consequences for doing the wrong things. No real consequences for doing the right things. As a matter of fact, it appears as if the people who do the wrong things ultimately get rewarded with bigger and bigger things, and the people who seemingly do the right things or keep themselves out of this messy situations end up not getting rewarded in that sense. These are staggering sums. But let's not stop here. So since 2015, when we've had a new government, how much has been spent on power as well? Because I know that there's been so much money that has been pumped in as well. For example, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, so we have what? Generation, we have transmission, we have distribution. The distribution was sold, and power generation was sold. So distribution was sold, power generation was sold, but transmission was kept in the government in that sense. And I know that they've been spending some money or some money,
huge sums
but
of
the
money.
transmission grid has collapsed a few times in alone, so where there was total blackout the entire country. And I know that I think they've been arranged either some bailouts for even the discos or some kind of arrangements for them as well. So if we're really going to privatize it, let's privatize this thing and let's know that the private sector is in charge. We'll worry about the consequences later, the huge bills or whatever it is that is going to come out of it at the end of the day.
But do you think Nigerians are willing to pay the huge bill if they can be guaranteed regular power supply?
So it's a chicken and egg catch-22 situation.
Yes.
Do you pay more to guarantee more constant electricity? Or do you show us that you can supply constant electricity and then we're convinced and are able to pay more at the end of the day like that? So I think that's the real question here, because I don't think many Nigerians have any confidence in anybody they're saying they're providing power. You know, that they will provide that power if they are paid a bit more. I know somebody that was refunded 134,000 naira from a disco just because she raised hell.
So let me put it in perspective very quickly. In Obasanjo's regime, a total of 374.65 billion naira was spent on power. In Yar'Adua's regime, a total of 368.8 billion naira was spent. In GEJ's regime, a total of 211.5 billion naira was spent on power. I was still counting.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you very much. So we had to move on because of our time, but
Yes,
let's
please.
take some comments. Benga Kamu says the proposed probe of the investments in the power sector by past administrations is not going where. This is Nigeria. And then Dami says the people who do the wrong things get rewarded. For instance, carry the mace and become deputy Senate president.
This from a producer says, you now see that corruption is on non-reflective tariffs, as you always claim. It's a bit lopsided. Moses, thank you very much for your message, though.
All right.
And we go to this next story, and this one is for you, Mr. C. Akwa Ibom Assembly suspends local government chairman for alleged assault. This story is from the Daily Times. The State Assembly in Akwa Ibom on Thursday, that was yesterday, ordered the suspension of the chairman of Abak local government area, Imo Williams. His crime, or what he was found culpable for allegedly assaulting an artisan by the name Godwin Abraham. He said the man demanded he be paid his debt of 75,000 naira owed him by the council, and then he was beat up. Somewhat, just quick reminder that a lot of our lawmakers or public office holders have been caught in assault, or rather alleged assault charges. Senator Elisha Abo comes to mind as well. What are your thoughts on this move by the State Assembly?
Okay, the move by the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly is welcome. It's a welcome development. Now, quick backstop. An artisan enters into a contract with Abak local government to provide certain services. He provides the services. He raises a bill of 75,000. The council doesn't engage him with regards to either paying the money instrumentally or paying him in full. Then the aide of the chairman assaults him. What is the chairman's reaction? Sack the aide or suspend the aide. No mention of the transaction of the debt owed. So it's another recurring issue in Nigeria. People in power who tend to abuse their offices to torment or suppress Nigerians. And for me, the ideal solution here would be for the chairman to resign, but he will not. This is Nigeria, unfortunately. So he should be held vicariously responsible for the actions of his aide, because this is with regards to an official transaction and doing official working hours. So he should be made to lose his seat.
Now, it kind of reawakens the consciousness of the fact that most of the people we elect into public offices, sometimes we do not necessarily question their personalities, or maybe engage in some mental evaluation. It seems like a stretch, but how much attention do you think is placed on the personalities or the behavioral patterns of these people that are elected into public offices?
Valentine, the truth of the matter is, the majority of Nigerians are not involved in the process that throws off these candidates. We only get to know of them or meet them on the day of the election or after they've emerged, and then it's too late. So you're basically dealing with two devils, and you choose the better one.
All right. Thank you very much, C. Let's go on to Taiwo for the next one. It's a very worrying and bizarre story here from the Ondo State House of Assembly, where they say snakes have taken over the assembly and chased away lawmakers. The report is in New Telegraph, and from this report, it said yesterday snakes dropped from the ceiling during plenary. It chased away the lawmakers, and the assembly was forced to abruptly adjourn indefinitely. Can you take us through this story?
So can I do this evil after they're doing cartoons? Yeah, so, the question is this. So your policymakers, you're supposed, it's like living in a house and you don't take care of the house. That's the truth. So I don't even understand. It's a very comical story. It's a very comical scenario. And they're saying, it's affecting them, their ability to perform their legislative duties.
By the way, it's not yesterday was not the first time.
No, it started since Wednesday or thereabouts. Since Wednesday, when it rains, the roof caves. So let me read what they wrote here in the New Telegraph. The appearance of snakes led to pandemonium as lawmakers scampered for safety. The snakes, it was learned, have been falling from the ceiling of the assembly since Wednesday. Then somebody wrote here and said, the mystery snake. you know, and in one of the things, and I'm saying to myself, mystery snakes. Snakes thrive in certain environments,
and they brood over
and
time.
they brood over time. So, you know, when we refuse to try and understand our environment or how things operate generally, we leave everything to chance. And once we can't explain it, we then call it a mystery.
Yes,
we say it's people from some village, it's the enemies at work, and so on and so forth, and so on and so, like monkey swallowing money, it's gorillas, this one, and so on and so forth, like that. There, for crying out loud. Take care of your immediate environment first and foremost. Cut the bushes. Plant snake repelling plants like tobacco plants or whatever it is, and so on and so forth in there. They're very basic. Fix your roof, for crying out loud. You're the legislative chamber.
They said they put in a bid for that and it's been approved. So it's just the execution, the execution of.
However, it brings to the fore a much bigger question, which one of the things they raised here, the fact that at the state level, maybe even at the, I'm not sure if it's the same at the federal level, but they actually have, they can't go ahead and do some of those things without having recourse to the state governor.
I'm sorry. This is this is ridiculous. Yeah, there's a State House of Assembly Commission. The previous members of the House, there were votes for maintaining the structure. What happened? This damage didn't happen overnight.
Yes.
So nobody's asking questions. And then the maintenance team in the House of Assembly Commission, what do they do every blessed day?
They're administrative staff. They're people that should lock it up.
So,
there's a health code. There's and all of these things. They should lock up the building and say you can't enter.
Ayo, there's a vote. If you haven't gotten the money, have you escalated the issue?
To who?
This is ridiculous.
All right. Well, they said they're going to escalate to the governor, and they said just to assure those who they're representing that the fact that they're going on recess doesn't mean they will not continue to come to the offices. They will just not sit in the chamber until the issues have been resolved. So no cause for alarm. Your representatives are still working.
Okay.
All right. It sounds like palliatives. Well, Premium Times has this story. Nigerian Air Force promotes officer who returned missing 37,000 euros. This story is for you, Mr. Ceee. In this report, the man, the Nigerian officer, he's a corporal. He was promoted 2 levels actually to the rank of corporal. He found this said some routine patrol with some of his colleagues, and he handed it over to the owner. Said he found it at the airport's Hajj camp market on July 16. Please take us through the story, especially highlighting this Bashir Omar of a person and how it is that he found the said money and maybe some form of compensation and the moves that the Nigerian Air Force is taking to ensure that this kind of behavior is encouraged.
Okay, first of all, why is the owner, one Alhaji Ahmad, walking around with 7,000 euros in cash?
It is money, probably a businessman.
It raises a number of questions, but that's by the side.
Okay.
Why are we celebrating something that should happen every day?
Why shouldn't we?
I'm sorry.
It doesn't happen every day. Let's be honest.
No, it's a sign of how bad Nigeria has fallen to that we're now celebrating honesty.
I understand.
But
I understand your pessimism. But
in other parts of the world, when you're rewarded for honesty, integrity, and faithfulness, even if it's expected of you, your child is meant to respect and obey you, but you reward them for good behavior. It's just an incentive.
The reward is that if you that same thing happens to you, somebody will reciprocate that gesture. That's the ultimate reward. Now, it's a group of immigrants in Canada, in Halifax, for example, just started this thing. It's a kiosk. You go in there, there's no attendant. You buy what you need to, you take what you buy there and you put the money there and go. They're starting the pilot. I've forgotten what it's called now.
Yes,
but my point is this: at the end of the day, and I lean in his direction a bit, but because things are so bad, we need to make a few examples so that people can see how it. But the ultimate reward is that if I forget my own 1,000 naira, somebody else will pick it up and be able to return it to me.
Okay, final point. In the workplace, the only reason you should be promoted is results, work, not because you're honest. You can be incompetent and honest. Now, why double promote him? Because he merely returned money. It's ordinarily expected of him.
You call it meh because you probably didn't find the money. But I mean, just like you mentioned earlier, Taiwo, you said there should be consequences for bad behavior and also consequences for good behavior.
Yes,
so
I agree.
If you set a precedent in this way, it was it's a bit of a stretch for you, Mr. C, that he was given double promotion that he would have achieved in 10 years ordinarily, just because of
but he got carried in a he said the first time a non-commissioned officer was carried in an official aircraft and all that with his family members, and so I think that's enough. On the problem is that we've desecrated our institutions so much that they don't mean anything. That when you see that the Air Force is doing this, you see them all over the streets of Lagos blowing sirens and they're harassing everybody all over the place. There's no regard for that uniform, for the authority with which
I'm just going to read one sentence and I'm done. Right. In a remark earlier, the commander of the National Air Defense Corps Ikeja, Bashiru Maman, had said Mr. Umar displayed a rare show of honesty and integrity when he found and returned the money.
All right.
Journals lapel pin on WhatsApp says, I'm with Ayo and Valentine Ohu. 37,000 euros by 403 naira to a euro is over 14 million naira. He should be celebrated, he said.
Okay, thank you. Let's know your thoughts. Should we celebrate honesty in Nigeria, or is it just a normal thing to do? Taiwo, let me come to you for this one. Only herders with travel documents should cross borders, says the Ekiti State Governor, Dr. Fayemi. He said that people from outside the country must respect state legislations that regulate grazing. Can you please take us to the story?
So, Governor Fayemi, former Minister of Mines and Steel, eventually went on to become Governor of Ekiti State. He's been on that for some months now, and also the chairman of the Governors Forum, and is saying that we're losing about $14 billion yearly to the farmer herders clashes.
Yes.
He's also saying that, look, in terms of we need to be mindful of the sensitivities and the use of polarizing terminologies and concepts, in the way about this scenario in that sense. Now, to bring it to context, where all these things start from, the movement of people across West African community was something that was adopted in 1978, the 1978 Economic Community of West African States Protocol on Free Movement, in that sense there, and that's what he was speaking with reference to. And that insofar as we have that, which has been the argument that people have had and said people can cross over from different parts of the West Africa in there, but there must be some regulation, and he's saying that people can't just cross because we signed on to some policy or we're part of some agreement or some protocol there. They need to show some kind of travel document. If I fly into Ghana or even I drive by road to Benin Republic, I need to show documentation that that I'm going in there and that I'm coming out. So I'm leaving a country which is a sovereign state to another sovereign state in there. And I think he's right for saying what it is that he's saying. He's saying our customs and our immigration border patrol agents should actually be more vigilant in that sense. The question is, do we have enough? Are they armed with the right tools and equipped with the right tools in this, to be able to achieve some of these things that he's talking about? And also, let's even ask ourselves the real question there. Do we really understand where this whole situations come from, this whole quagmire, how it's happened in that sense? These cattle in themselves that people are talking about, the herdsmen and so on and so forth like that, do they actually own the cattle? Or is it other people that own the cattle? Because it's not cheap. So and when you see these guys, that it's hard, it's almost impossible for them to be able to pay to the kind of the volume and the total cost of all the livestock in themselves there. Those are serious questions we need to ask ourselves, and say that, look, how do we really stem this thing? It's not enough to check their documentation at the borders, but realistically, how do we put an end to this menace?
All right. Thank you very much.
Quick messages here. Ian says, what is that man saying? He should misplace the money and let me pick it so you see how he feels if I return it and how he'll feel if I don't. Yeah. As much as money is hard to get like this, we should actually celebrate such honest acts when we see them. Taya says, yes, we should celebrate integrity. The concept of incentives gives credence to us appreciating people's honesty, integrity, and sincerity. It's a word or a world where punitive measures are meted out on offenders, while good people do not get appreciated. More messages here. This one from, please add your names to your messages so we can take them.
All right. Steve Obiaku says the snakes in Ondo Assembly isn't strange, so this phenomenon isn't strange. Didn't we have Aso Rock rats in the past? It tells you how we score very low in maintenance. Visit all government buildings and you'll almost cry. The national stadium's buildings in Surulere and Abuja can't pass for a games reserve.
Wow. Dami from Ipaja says, if he stole the money and he was caught, he wouldn't debate his punishment. So I do not think it should be different when he did something good. But I agree with the analyst who said that the promotion should be the reward for results. Should not be the reward, or should be the reward for results,
And
not honesty. There are better ways to reward honesty. A cut of the money found is one of them. This shows that we're not a result-driven country. Interesting. Our next story is from the Guardian newspaper. Senate's under fire over the bow and go screening policy. The condemnation of the Senate's bow and go screening policy that shields ministerial nominees from rigorous questioning intensified yesterday. Essentially, about 15 of the 23 nominees assessed so far have been accorded the controversial treatment. I was just telling Ayo this morning that just a quick reminder that the day before they started the screening process, they had given us a disclaimer that we should just bear in mind that some of the people who have been nominated by Buhari have stage frights. They are shy, so we should just give them benefit of doubt.
To be forewarned is to be forearmed.
Okay,
So this is C. Let's take us through this.
Okay, so backstop to this story. In 2004, Senator Wahab Dosumu was appointed minister. So the National Assembly, the Senate then, in its unusual wisdom, decided that since he was their colleague, rather than ask him any serious questions about his ability or competence to do whatever role is assigned to him, asked him to take a bow. Now, over the years, that has continued to play out and has resulted in the absurdity we saw 2 days ago. 23 nominees turn up, 15 are told to take a bow.
Well, 8 left.
To show you how ridiculous this is, I'm going to identify one of them.
Why is it ridiculous? You just mentioned that some of them are their colleagues, so maybe perhaps they have a track record of their performance.
We're getting back to track record, but let me point this out. Abubakar Aliyu was nominated to represent Yobe State. Now, interestingly, he's not a member of any legislative house, but he was asked to take a bow. Now, listen to the reasons. One, his brother was a former lawmaker.
Crying out loud, I need to speak about, just ask a question. Do you think, almost obvious, but we do not hold our lawmakers to a higher standard? That's why they will do things like this. At the end of the day, how can you say that someone is coming for an interview, even if the person was headhunted, he'll still have to face a panel of interviewers? So
when it's a retirement chamber, what do you expect from retirees?
Ayo. This is ridiculous. Okay, you have an Amechi who was Minister of Transport for 4 years.
Yes.
There are different schools of thought as to his performance. He wasn't asked any question. Take a bow. Godswill Akpabio, take a bow. I'm sure I don't know how Rauf Aregbesola was nominated, but this is all just ridiculous.
Oyewole says the bow and go thing is the most ridiculous thing, and the entire Senate to her is ridiculous. How do we know that these people have planned, or what these people have planned during their tenure? That's essentially the question that Nigerians sought to be answered. Prince says the guy is a security officer who's expected to secure both lives and property. So which results do we want again?
All right, thank you so much, everyone, for your comments this morning, and thanks to our analysts for joining us. Thank you, Taiwo Oyewole at Tai Oyewole on Twitter, and thanks, Mr. Ceee at Mista Ceee on Twitter. Next up, we have the Locker Room 981, but before then, we enjoy some nice music here on Smooth 98.1.
The headlines.
Long.